Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight for CBS News Detroit at 7. I'm Shayna Humphreys. Tonight we are talking all things aerospace. Michigan has always been a hub of innovation, and its aerospace industry is no different. Joining us tonight for some insight on that industry is Jeff Simek, the general manager of RCO Aerospace, and Tony Vernaci, founder of the Aerospace Industry Association of Michigan, as well as our very own next weather meteorologist, Ahmed Badji, who is joining us just because weather and aerospace kind of go hand in hand.
I grew up here, so I know a little bit of the history too. Rich history that goes along with it.
Yes, you are filled with fun facts, and I know we'll be getting a few of those
This is going to be a fun one.
Pretty soon here. But Tony and Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah,
we want to make this accessible for our average folks at home, like myself, who don't know much about the aerospace industry. So I'll start with you, Tony. What exactly is the aerospace industry?
Well, for us, it's anything that leaves the earth. So whether it's, commercial aircraft like you and I fly on, general aviation, a private aircraft, defense, space, advanced air mobility, so you think about drones. For us, it's any of that is what our definition is of the aerospace industry.
And Michigan plays a bit of a role in this. Obviously, we think of the automotive industry, but there are some parallels, right?
Yeah, and what's interesting, what a lot of people don't realize is we've been playing a role doing this for over 80 years, since World War II. Wow. And it's just been kind of quietly growing and expanding through the shadows of the automotive industry. But it's a big industry. There's almost 1,000 companies here in Michigan, all the way from the furthest tip of the UP in Calumet down to our southern border, Jackson, east coast to west coast of the state. So it's all over the entire state. The whole ecosystem is here in Michigan.
1,000 companies, impressive. Now, Jeff, RCO Aerospace, you guys are in the manufacturing side of things?
Yeah, we provide a system that's basically the seating, and it's for business jets, actually. And seating is highly regulated. It's treated like the airframe, and we're an automotive company that ultimately was building seats for the auto industry. And back in 2008, a customer came to us and said, hey, look, we're interested in the automotive technology, and the supply chain that's behind it. And in the end, we started making aerospace seats, and today we're about, I kind of laugh because we're like a 15-year-old in the industry, right? So we're about to get our driver's permit, type thing. But the reality is we're growing, and it's been a great diversification for RCO. And we look to provide that diversification in our experiences to others, in the auto industry today, because I think there's definitely manufacturing capability out there in the industry. And for us, you think about when we got involved in it in 2008, think about what was happening then, the crisis, financial crisis back then. And the automotive industry has had its ups and downs, and we continue to see that. And we always think, diversified portfolio, right? And how do you strengthen your business? And so that's one thing that's been very helpful to us. And we've weathered a lot of storms as a result of having both auto and aero.
Weather, what a transition. It's like we planned that almost.
So, I mean, we're looking at, just aerospace engineering, aeronautics here in Michigan. Speaking of Michigan then, University of Michigan, the number 5th ranked school for this in the entire country. You've got alumni there that are not just flying, but also potentially orbiting the Earth. You got 7 specific astronaut alumni that come from U of M. So this is a huge thing that's not just rooted in Michigan, but rooted in Southeast Michigan as well.
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about it, what's interesting is most people think to be in aerospace, if you want to do aerospace engineering, I need to be an aerospace engineer. And that is true in some cases if you're doing, thermodynamics or propulsions. But the fact is, a lot of the companies here in the state, they're hiring electrical engineers, computer science engineers, and mechanical engineers. So it's every day. It's not just related to, aerospace engineering, but there's so much opportunity from the shop floor level all the way through the technical trades that the industry is flourishing and is growing faster than it can keep up with.
And you mentioned, there's a word that you mentioned in there, thermodynamics, that brings me back in a bad way back to college, because there are a lot of different parts with, especially weather, where these classes are really intertwined when it comes to these different parts. But the way you say it here, you could have somebody that is doing computer sciences in a completely different field that has a chance then to potentially advance into this.
Absolutely. Because avionics is a big part of the aircraft, but electrical engineering is what that is built on. So the black box that everybody's looking for when there's a disaster like there was this past weekend, they build that in Grand Rapids. GE Aviation is building it. And a little fun fact, the black box is actually orange. So, but yeah, if you look at all the technology in our cars, your home appliances, everything's got embedded software. And so software engineers are in huge demand for the industry because of all the technology that's very similar and the same thing that we have in our cars.
This has got to be a really exciting time to be involved in the aerospace industry with, the changing climate and the changing standards that we're all seeing with vehicles, electric vehicles sort of evolving before our eyes. Has there been a more exciting time to be in this industry?
No, there really hasn't. You have the space side of things, and I'll tell you that, companies like SpaceX are spending time in Michigan, utilizing the supply chain here, especially from a tooling perspective. I saw a billboard probably 3 months ago, and SpaceX was looking for our folks from Michigan to come to their neck of the woods. But the reality is you have space, you have the satellite manufacturing that is something that's key. We see a vision in the future, and many do, about 60,000 satellites in low Earth orbit, helping us communicate. And that's obviously a global demand, and that's one thing to bring up, is that demand in aerospace is global. So in the auto industry, and I'm not trying to create a tease between the both industries, but the reality is that what happens in North America obviously has an impact on the auto industry, but the reality is aerospace is global, so it doesn't matter what's happening in Michigan or North America per se. And so, like, satellite manufacturing is key, advanced air mobility, which is something that we see, and that's a little bit more tied to the electric aircraft, but really it's about urban or rural, package or people. Right, so package, rural deliveries, civil or military. So there's a big expansion and opportunity there. And again, but the reality is that we see a huge opportunity just in the old commercial aerospace, right? Because at the end of the day, passenger traffic is back to where it's getting close to back to pre-COVID levels. And as that growth continues, we see there's forward outlooks that ultimately there's 40,000 aircraft that need to be delivered in the next 20 years, right? And so there's lots of demand in the commercial aircraft side as the underdeveloped countries start to. The first thing you want to do is you get money in your pocket and all that stuff. You want to go traveling, right? And so there's a lot of travel that we're going to see moving on in the next 20 years, and there's huge growth in commercial, I guess is my point. But.
Fascinating. We are going to talk a lot more about what may be coming down the pike right after this break. We'll be right back. I don't know if there's been a better time to start a brand new news operation.
The newsroom was pretty much starting from scratch.
It's fresh, it's innovative.
Lots of energy, lots of passionate reporters.
Knowing what we're starting here puts so much joy in my heart.
We have reporters who are embedded in these communities.
Many people throughout St. Clair Shores have been fighting to save this water tower.
If there's a miracle out there, get a hold of me.
We are part of the neighborhood. Our newsroom is part of your neighborhood.
Residents here on Stansbury say they are fed up with all this flooding that keeps happening.
We shouldn't have to live like this.
Telling the stories that otherwise nobody would know about.
Now, AJ, you went to the downtown boxing gym and you really got to see how this gym is impacting kids' lives.
Yeah, Chris, as soon as I walked in the building, it was very uplifting.
It is a boxing gym, but it's more than boxing. We do homework. We help them with the SAT.
When it comes to the weather, it's forecasting what's going to fall on your driveway, when is it going to happen, and how might it actually affect your day-to-day life.
Hundreds of people continue to call in reporting problems throughout the county.
Cleanup crews working all throughout Metro Detroit.
Get them down and get them cleaned up.
Local news to me means we're in your community, we're telling stories that matter to you, that affect you, that maybe we can get change and things done in your community.
She was born without a right arm, and then her legs didn't grow, I guess, the way that they should have.
But for 20-year-old Fortune High School alum Sumaya, she doesn't let that, or anything else for that matter, get in her way.
So you have a favorite button over there?
Yeah, do you want to press it?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and...
This is my favorite.
I hope everyone watching that piece in particular says, I want to help that little girl and help that family and help get her to college.
Well, we are rethinking the way local news is done in the 21st century and how to tell the most important stories in a compelling way.
You can get news anywhere, but for us, we're a fresh face with a new perspective, and we're trying to make a difference in the community, to tell stories that matter to you.
I think we're here to listen and actually hear what you're saying, and we're putting together a newscast that will show that.
I want to tell those people's stories because it's needed. Detroit is ready. Get ready, because here we come.
Reporting in Dearborn Heights.
Live in Wayne County.
Reporting in Adrian.
Live in Livonia.
Reporting from South Lyon, Kelly Vaughn.
CBS News Detroit.
You're watching CBS News Detroit.
Welcome back. We are still joined tonight by Jeff Simek and Tony Vernaci to help us dive into all things aerospace. And before we went to the break, Jeff, you were mentioning some really exciting things that are being worked on that may be coming in the future, but we want to take a moment to look the other direction. Yeah. Way back into the past. You've been doing a little research and studying.
Yeah, I mean the history for Southeast Michigan, especially when it comes to this, I mean, a lot of that is rooted. You go all the way back with the words Willow Run pop up every single time, especially when it comes back to World War II. But there's that tie-in then with the Ford Motor Company, and that's where, you know, some people might be thinking, well, okay, Michigan, is that really a place for aerospace to be something? But it's existed for a long time here.
Absolutely. I mean, that's where the intersection of what makes Michigan so interesting, because that's where aerospace and automotive really had their first major intersection. So during the war, when there was more manufacturing companies were brought to the table to say, we need your help, you need to support the effort. And Henry Ford's engineers said, we think we can show you how to build this B-24 bomber on an assembly line. Had never been done before. And so he actually went back to his hotel room, took the placemats from the restaurant, drew out a 3.5 million square foot facility, came back the next day and said, we can get this done for you. And in less than 4 years, Willow Run Airport was built. And when you hear about supply chain shortages today, there was no supply chain then. They had to make their own supply chain. They had to bring people, there was no housing. They had to bring people in from the fields, put up housing. A lot of the men were off at war. Rosie the Riveter, we all know Rosie, sure. And that's where Rosie, you know, was coined, is from Willow Run Airport. But in less than 4 years, they built that 3.5 million square foot facility, and by the end of the war, they were building one every 59 minutes. And they put 8,600 of them into the field, and a lot of people believe that's how Detroit saved the world.
I was going to say, I mean, the numbers that go along with it are just astonishing when you see that out of the B-24s going into service over the course of 2 9-hour shifts is what it was saying. Willow Run was supplying 70% of that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an astonishing number to see that ties back to even just here. And a lot of people just wonder and think, you know, you go, all right, automotive industry, the big ones obviously back during the war, you got General Motors, you got Ford, you think trucks, but not necessarily planes.
That's right. Yeah, and you know, the automotive industry has obviously been our history for over 100 years, and understandably so. But I always oversimplify it and say, if you're making a bracket for a car, you can make a bracket for an airplane. And it really is. It's machining parts and components and assembly and wiring and systems, everything that's in the automotive industry. And so as the automotive industry grew, aerospace was just quietly in the shadows of that industry. It never went away, and it has, you know, subtly over the years has grown. And automotive is a very cyclical industry. So companies over the years needed to level out those bumps of the cycles, and they would, you know, slowly, you know, diversify and get more and more into aerospace. And during the economic downturn of 07, 08, a lot of companies will tell you, had it not been for the aerospace industry, that here in Michigan, they probably would have gone out of business.
Wow. A fascinating history. So you just mentioned the first intersection of automotive and aerospace. Jeff, from where we are now, what do you think is the most exciting next intersection that we will see? Something that we will actually see in our lifetime?
Oh, I think you're going to, one thing that I think automotive industry and our cadence here in Michigan for bringing products to market, I think satellite manufacturing is a huge opportunity for us. I think advanced air mobility as it relates to parcel, moving parcels from, you know, urban and rural areas.
So this has got to be more complicated than put it on a drone, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And, you know, I think the other side of it is electrification of aircraft, right? With the carbon emissions of fuel, we see that in the news a lot, right? And I think that one thing that's interesting about automotive is that we're really turning our wheels and getting the battery density to where it needs to be. And we, automotive kind of just tackles it, right? And goes at the battery density to obviously propel a car for more miles and things of that nature. So, we're building intellectual property here in Michigan that ultimately aerospace, they always, they came to Detroit looking for seats, right? Because they were tired of the comfort that they were getting in the business jets, right? From the old school way of manufacturing seats. So when we built our seat, they thought it was from outer space, right? I mean, they looked at this thing and a mechanical marvel, looked like an automotive seat for the most part. But the reality is that, aerospace is always interested in the auto industry, and they'll definitely be interested in the auto industry relative to electrification.
And that, I mean, that probably makes people have a little pause for a second and go, wait, all right, so we're flying off of just a battery then, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, you're seeing this big push, like you said, into electrification specifically for vehicles. And even at the North American International Auto Show last year, there were electric flight examples that were taking place there. I mean, so this is something that is being actively researched and planned.
Yeah, no, it's definitely in the concept phase, but we do have an understanding of aircraft that are flying and that are going to be certified in the next few years relative to just small aircraft for not the vertical takeoff and landing, but just normal aircraft with an electric engine. And actually, Tony, there is some folks coming to the Aero One show that are in front of that industry quite a bit.
Yeah, one of our speakers is the CEO of Eviation. So they have developed a completely electric aircraft. It's not a PowerPoint presentation. It's had test flights. They have orders for almost 200 aircraft from airlines. And it's a small commuter regional type aircraft, but it's all electric. So the technology that you hear about in automotive is definitely prominent in the aerospace industry as well. And then when you think about electrification, the subsystems that were hydraulic and now converting that to electric is going through. Lightweighting is important for cars. It's just as important for aircraft.
Actually, off of that real quick, just from looking at some of the things that go on into it, aircraft themselves, I mean, they're big, so the assumption initially is made that all these things are going to be really, 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 really heavy, but really they're made quite light. So does it seem like there might be an easier step when it comes to electrification there than trying to drive this big thing made out of steel on a roadway? Maybe a little easier with weight balance, that kind of thing?
I mean, it is all about getting out weight and fuel efficiency, because that is the name of the game is lowering your carbon footprint, saving fuel cost, but not, compromising cargo and distance and number of passengers. So there's a perfect balance there that's over my head. Yeah, but honestly, it is changing rapidly, and that's where the two industries are so similar, because what one industry has as a priority, the other does just as much.
All right, well, you did mention the Aero Show, and we want to know much more about that. We're going to take a quick break, and the conversation continues after this. I don't know if there's been a better time to start a brand new news operation.
The newsroom was pretty much starting from scratch.
It's fresh, it's innovative.
Lots of energy, lots of passionate reporters.
Knowing what we're starting here puts so much joy in my heart.
We have reporters who are embedded in these communities.
Many people throughout St. Clair Shores have been fighting to save this water tower.
If there's a miracle out there, get a hold of me.
We are part of the neighborhood. Our newsroom is part of your neighborhood.
Residents here on Stansbury say they are fed up with all this flooding that keeps happening.
Because look, it was like to the middle of the block. Now it's coming all the way to the end of the block.
We shouldn't have to live like this.
Telling the stories that otherwise nobody would know about.
Now, AJ, you went to the downtown boxing gym, and you really got to see how this gym is impacting kids' lives.
Yeah, Chris, as soon as I walked in the building, it was very uplifting.
It's a boxing gym, but it's more than boxing. We do homework. We help them with the SAT.
When it comes to the weather, it's forecasting what's going to fall on your driveway, when is it going to happen, and how might it actually affect your day-to-day life.
Hundreds of people continue to call in reporting problems throughout the county.
Cleanup crews working all throughout Metro Detroit.
Get them down and get them cleaned up.
Local news to me means we're in your community, we're telling stories that affect you, that maybe we can get change and things done in your community.
Well, we're rethinking the way local news is done in the 21st century and how to tell the most important stories in a compelling way.
Local news is all about letting people know what's happening in their community.
I think we're here to listen and actually hear what you're saying, and we're putting together a newscast that will show that.
I want to tell those people's stories because it's needed. Detroit is ready. Get ready, because here we come.
Reporting in Dearborn Heights.
Live in Wayne County.
Reporting in Adrian.
Live in Livonia.
Reporting from South Lyon, Kelly Vaughn.
CBS News Detroit.
You're watching CBS News Detroit.
Welcome back. We are joined by our aerospace experts today, Jeff Simek and Tony Vernaci. And you guys have a big event coming up in just a couple of weeks, the Aero One Show. Tell me all about it, Tony.
Yeah, so this is something that we've been working on for almost 5 years now, the conference itself, and then the pandemic hit. And so that, like everything, we had to go into pause mode. But what we were really seeking to do is to bring the industry to Michigan, because the industry is here in the state, but the rest of the country, the rest of the world doesn't realize that. And so our goal was to bring people to Michigan, as many people from outside of the state as we could, change their thoughts about what Michigan is, help them understand how big the industry is. And our goal was for them to have a good experience. So we debuted it last year in downtown Grand Rapids at the JW Marriott, and we absolutely exceeded every expectation. We maxed out their facility. We had over 160 companies, people from 20 other states and 5 countries came to the show. So this year we decided to expand it because the one thing we are trying to do is not just provide people with information that they need about the industry, but we want to provide them with an opportunity. We call it Connect, Learn, and Grow. How do you make connections in the industry, learn about the industry, ultimately grow your business in the industry? And so we've expanded the conference this year, and we're holding it in downtown Detroit at the Renaissance Center. And it is going like crazy right now, and every expectation is it's going to probably meet or exceed where we were last year.
So this is a lot more than PowerPoints, right? You were saying there's going to be some pretty exciting stuff happening.
Yeah, no, there's industry experts coming from all segments of aerospace. And to note that we also have a board of directors for the Aerospace Industry Association. So we have big brand names: Pratt Whitney, GE Aviation, Liebherr, Woodward Aerospace. RCO is a little smaller brand on the board, but in any event, you know, we use our collective board membership to come up with and draw in and attract the speakers, right? And so, you know, we've got Boeing, Airbus coming in relative to the supply chain, and you know, certainly Michigan is something that they're interested in as well. So.
You stole my next question. I was going to say, so I mean, there really is an impressive lineup in here. You're talking about, you know, partnering with Airbus. You've got Boeing. You have Aviation, who we were just talking about. And some of the different things in here even are just like, with Boeing, they've had different aircraft launches over the past few years, and how a lot of these different companies are trying to meet that next level. And a lot of that comes along with even just trying to make things greener, like what we were talking about. So there are so many different levels to this. What are some of the more, I guess, what do you think are some of the more impressive ones that are coming in here that people would like to see?
Well, you know, I think the Boeing and the Airbus ones are really about where do they see the industry headed, right? And certainly with COVID, the supply chain, as passenger traffic dropped, the supply chain, the need for aircraft obviously diminished for a period of time, right, during COVID. And in the supply chain that was all aerospace, there's a lot of disruption going on there. So in terms of those businesses, you know, going out of business. And so now they have a scenario where they're really looking for, you know, to cultivate and bring up new suppliers in the industry, just broad stroke across the country, but obviously coming to Michigan for this. I think that's a big piece. I think, you know, I like the presentation on From Going Auto to Aero by Jeff Simek. That's going to be a really good one. But anyways, I'm thinking, you know, the advanced air mobility space. We have we have a great space company up in the UP that's doing propulsion for satellites, right? And it's a very unique scenario. I haven't toured it. Tony has. He might be able to add a couple words on that.
Now, I want to stop you right there,
Okay.
too, so to make sure that everybody else at home heard that, too. You said that's in the Upper Peninsula.
Yes, Upper Peninsula. Yep, right up near Calumet, Houghton. Actually, a bit of a, there's a research university up there, right? Michigan Technological University, and they're a big partner of the Aerospace Industry Association of Michigan. And so, we spend a lot of time up in the UP, at least, well, once a year we go up there for a career day for the students. And there's a ton of research. They have, they're on par with, maybe not on par with Michigan per se in terms of size, but they actually have incredible research going on. And some of that research is turned into actual live business, with propulsion of satellites. Because when the satellite's up in there, we got to figure out how to get it down, right? And they're going to stay up there for a number of years, and each year they're going to come a little bit closer to Earth. But at some point in time, the useful life of the satellite's over, and they need to take this thing in atmosphere and burn it off, or they want to reposition it. Obviously, these are expensive units that are taking a SpaceX flight in a bread loaf size container up into space, right? And that's not a cheap ticket to get up there. And obviously the technology that's on the satellite in itself is very expensive, and a lot of research that goes on in that. And so they want flexibility and agility with these satellites when they're out there.
Fascinating. Who knew so much was going on in the UP?
Yeah.
Tony, what are you looking forward to most with the conference this year?
It's putting Michigan on stage a little bit more this year than we did last year. So we've got a lot of Michigan-based content and speakers. We have 32 exhibitors there as well that are exhibiting their product, technology, services. Because again, we want to introduce the nation to how great this industry is here in the state, and we want people to be able to come in and experience that and meet people and really help them understand, while Michigan is great at automotive, it's so much more than that. And it's such a great opportunity because the automotive industry is changing. We know that electric is going to really disrupt the supply base. The aerospace industry is experiencing unprecedented growth, and the way that it's going to be able to climb that mountain is by expanding its supply base. It's a perfect storm.
So on a personal note then, you said this was years in the making to get this to happen here.
Yes.
On a personal note then, how does it feel to actually see it happening?
It's wonderful. It really is, because a little over 7 years ago, we started this with a blank sheet of paper. There was nothing. And we all just kind of sat around and talked about what we think the industry is here, and it's underserved industry, and we wanted to really just kind of lean in and work together to change that. We're not trying to build something, build it and they'll come scenario. It's here. And we're not trying to compare ourselves to any other state. We're just trying to let people know what's here. And people can decide for themselves if it's a solution for what they need for their business. And we're just trying to change that so that there's a brand for the state of Michigan that's in addition to the automotive industry.
Beautiful. So the Aero One show, September 5th through 7th at the Renaissance Center. For people who want more information, where can they find that?
Very easy, aero1show.com. So it's Aero and the word one show.com. And you can see the whole lineup, the agenda, the speakers, what the exhibit layout is. We've got 2 great networking sections. We've got the top of the Renaissance Center for the evening before for a very, very nice reception to meet the speakers, meet our board of directors, meet the sponsors. Be a great way to kick off the show.
Great. Well, we wish you luck with the event. It sounds like it's already been such a success. We're excited to see what you guys make of it this year. This is Jeff Simek, General Manager of RCO Aerospace, and Tony Vernaci, founder of the Aerospace Industry Association of Michigan. This has been enlightening. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.